GingerGM.
Well, hello and welcome to another analysis session with me. You should know me by now. And in this video, I'm going to analyse my second round game from the Dundee 150 year anniversary competition. And officially it was the third round as such. But in the first round, I was due to play Keith Arkle, and he couldn't make the first round. Keith Arkle being another Grandmaster good friend of mine, he travels extensively, and he's actually playing another tournament. So I've called it round two, because for me it's my second game, and I'm looking at this from my own personal point of view. And my opponent in round two, I won the first game, so 100%, was, I suppose, the pre-tournament favourite. And that is the Lithuanian player who's been board one for Lithuania for a number of years, Rozentalis. And Rozentalis, I'm going to bring up a picture of him here. He has a damn fine moustache. And his first name is not Mario or Luigi, just in case you wonder. But he's a really lovely guy, very friendly guy. And Rozentalis here has been really a brilliant player for a long time. He's a very experienced fighter. His highest elo, I think, was in the end of the 90s, and he got to 2650. And that was, you know, he was high rated when it really mattered. I've also thrown up results there from round two as well, so I'm kind of giving away what happened in the game, but it was a very interesting game, and I think, you know, hopefully I will teach you quite a bit from this game, because it's a real fighting game. I'm going to give you some clues of how to, you know, improve and what to take away from this game as well. And Rozentalis actually, so what's he known for? So when you're summing up your opponent, if you know your opponent at this level, you should already try to work out what their perceived strengths and weaknesses are. Now, Grandmasters basically don't just they might specialise in one area, but they don't really have any serious weaknesses. In order to be a Grandmaster, you need to be good at everything. But Rozentalis is a well-known endgame player. You know, he's been called one of the best endgame players in the world by his compatriots and other Grandmasters. So he's a very good endgame player. What I did wrong here was not take that really into consideration. I should have maybe strived for a more complicated tactical game against him. He's obviously a little bit older than me, and I had the white pieces, so maybe in this game I shouldn't pick the London system, because it can, you know, my opponent's very experienced in the London system. Maybe I should have come at him with some aggressive E4 opening to give myself a better chance, psychologically speaking. So these things need to be thought about. But anyway, let's move on to the game. Now, before I start, I'm going to use a computer assessment again. This is mainly for my benefit. I saw in the comments to my last video, some people didn't like it, and some people were criticising me because what I was saying didn't agree with the computer assessment. Now, again, do not get fantasised, carried away with what the computer says. During the tournament I was playing at, I was using my laptop with a different computer, which was giving me a different assessment to the one you see here. So if I say things like, oh, the computer said this at the time, it might not be what you see there. It's what I saw during my preparation, which is much more important. That was for the first game. And again, I'm telling you what I personally felt during the game, which I think is much more important than what the computer tells you. But I'm also going to use the computer in a way that you should use it after you play a game. So I'm trying to show you how you should analyse your own games after you play them, which is one of the most important things to get better, is how do you analyse your own games. And I'm trying to do this here in my analysis videos. I'm showing you how I analyse them. I'm also sharing it with you and trying to teach you at the same time. So it's not entirely how I'd analyse, but the computer can be a good tool if used in the right way. Anyway, let's crack on, shall we? Let's crack on. Well, okay, one more thing. God, I'll get to the game soon. I'm analysing, as you might see in another playlist, games played from the Summer League in London. And before I forget, I'm about to analyse round 3 game in another video. But we've got to vote on the best game, and you guys can help me out there. Now, if you go to the website here, and I'll put that rather long domain name in the description below the box. But you can see Summer Chess League, and if you go to week 3, and I'm just going to scroll down here, there's all the games here, and if you guys can help me in the comments basically pick the game which you think is the best game of week 3, and you can see they're all listed there, so you can quickly play through them. If you can help me pick what you think is the best game that was played in this Summer Chess League, that means I will also be able to do a video on that. So you could also maybe, quite interestingly, put your thoughts on that game you picked as best game and then compare it to my video, what I'm going to go over it. But that would do me a favour if you could go to that site and pick the game which you think should be the worthy best game of week 3. Okay, enough of that. On to the game. So I was white. Now, I did play the London system, as I've said, but my opponent has a lot of experience with it. Now, the reason I didn't go bishop f4 here, the reason I played knight to f3, is one line recently of bishop to f4, which is my normal way of playing, that I think is an interesting way that black can play. I was pretty sure my opponent wouldn't play this because it's not his style. Is c5, and I've done a video on this in my YouTube segment, d5, and now here, b5. This is something, and after a4, b4. And this is something which I'm sure white is okay. But in this position, I'd rather have my knight on f3 rather than my bishop on f4. Why is that? Well, let's just. This is the way I'm thinking with my slight move order, because if the same thing happens here with d5, here, I now have the possibility of playing bishop g5 in one move, and clearly it helps having my knight already on f3. And I quite like this bishop g5 move here because, you know, it threatens the double pawns and cause a little bit of mischief in the position. So that was my little subtle thinking before the game there. I don't think it's a big thing, but, you know, every little subtlety needs to be thought of. So I went knight to f3. My opponent played e6. I expected this, a very solid way to play against the London system. I now played bishop to f4. I'm not going to talk too much about the opening because you guys should know that. I'm going to talk about the opening a bit later on, so we can go into more detail with this London system. This is maybe for high level people who've already watched my London system videos and want to get a deeper understanding of this opening. So my opponent now has a number of moves, clearly. In the British, one of my opponents plays c5 here. d5 is another move. But if your opponent is a Queen's Indian player or Nimzo Indian player, then it's very likely you'll face this b6 move, which is a very solid way to play. Now, here there's a number of options I have, but I wanted to create my pyramid, so I went e3, and I want to go c3 next. My opponent developed bishop b7. I thought it was natural to develop my knight. I'm just going for the standard London system setup. Bishop to e7 now, and as soon as the bishop moves there, I see that whenever Carlsen has this position, as soon as the bishop goes to e7, he plays h3 here. And why is that? So you might be thinking, why waste a move of h3? I mean, I don't know if it's particularly necessary, but I mean, let's say I go bishop d3. Then I think what Carlsen is afraid of here, and a lot of players, is knight to h5. When that knight is aiming to exchange off the bishops. And at top level, top players think bishops are better than knights. I may be one of the only players who actually enjoys playing with my knights for some reason. I find they're tricky little guys. But I mean, this is now. I mean, maybe it's not so bad. I'd probably go bishop g3 here, and at some point black would take here. But then I get this open h file, and I haven't committed where my king has gone yet. This is important, and because I have the open h file, I would go queen e2 and castle queenside. And this is a very dynamic position. Again, don't mind what the computer says. This is something, if you're thinking, oh, the computer says this is worse than white, you've got totally the wrong mindset. It's about ideas. You're playing a human. I've got an open file. I've got an extra pawn in the center. I mean, you're certainly not worse here, whatever the computer says. I'm just putting the computer there for later on. And do give me your feedback on whether you like the computer or not. Maybe I'll get rid of it for future videos if it's a very negative attitude. I think it's more important to learn from what a grandmaster is saying, because I'm trying to teach you what I'm thinking, that's not going to teach you what it's thinking. It's only going to tell you a move without any ideas, any way to help you improve. But anyway, to avoid all this, Magnus goes h3. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to play like the big dog tonight. I'm going to play like Magnus. I'm going to beat Rozentalis like Magnus Carlsen. And of course, the idea now is if knight h5, bishop to h2, and you keep your bishop. I suppose it's quite a nice bishop, isn't it? It's on pretty decent diagonal. Now, why you might be thinking, why can't, for example, black in this position go knight to h5 now? Well, now it's slightly different because I can go bishop to g5. And this is now a totally different ball game because I'm going to swap my bishop for a bishop, bishop e7, and we swap a bishop for a bishop. And, you know, I don't give up the bishop pair. My opponent's knight is on a bad square here. So it's only when they play bishop e7, you play h3. Little subtleties. My opponent played d6, solid setup. I developed my last piece, and in the London, the bishop nearly always comes to this diagonal. It's the best square. My opponent played c5. He's got to play some pawn break here. And now I played c3. So I've kind of finished my first stage of development now. My opponent, again, has a number of setups. What's my plan here? Well, my plan, maybe I'm even going to go e4. You know, in some positions, queen e2, e4. This is something which I might consider. And another thing you do here, it's a bit like when I push Harry up the board, is that when your opponent has a fianchettoed structure, you can say the bishop is fianchettoed here. And that's my way of, you know, pronouncing fianchettoed, and I don't give a damn how you guys pronounce it at home. That's my pronunciation. You know what I mean. And I'm sure there'll now be 100 people saying, it's not said fianchetto. I've looked it up in the diary, in the dictionary, and you said it totally wrong. Your pronunciation is horrible. It said fianchetto. Oh yes, because my name is Geeky Phil, and that's what I... Okay, anyway, I love that geeky voice to put on. But okay, against this, a very good positional idea, and it is like when I push Harry, is to go a4 in this type of structure. So a4, and to go a5 and just try to nibble away at that pawn. Maybe go a6, use the a pawn, get your rook into the game. I've got a very solid centre, so that means I can play on the wings. When you're controlling the centre, it's a lot easier to play on the wings. And of course, I'm controlling the centre here because I've got the London set up with my d pawn leading the charge. Oh my words, that's a lovely blue colour I've put there. Okay, so now my opponent took on d4. Now, I'm still learning the London system. You know, anyone who thinks I'm a master at the London is wrong. I've only been playing it for about a year. To become a master in any opening, you need like at least 5 years solid experience in my eyes, whatever level you are. And the move I played here is totally okay. But in future, I would not play it. The move I played, you've got a decision. What do you take on d4 with? You should take with a pawn, because otherwise e5 is coming. Now, I took with the e-pawn. But in future, I would certainly take with the c-pawn. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, Grandmaster Mark Hedburn, about this, one of the most experienced grandmasters in England, who's played this type of opening for most of his life. And he said he always takes with the c-pawn. And when someone that experienced says that, I listen to them. I wish he told me that for the bloody game. And I also personally, it's like, what do you like playing yourselves? I quite like symmetrical pawn structures. I think they're very easy to play, and your plans are very simple. And I quite like simple plans. I'm a simple guy, you know. I like going checkmate, pushing pawns to normal squares, keeping my life easy. Why overcomplicate my life? And this position is a symmetrical position, but white must be slightly better here. Why? Well, I've got a space advantage because I've got a pawn on the fourth rank. My opponent doesn't. He has a rather cramped hedgehog position. It's easier to manoeuvre with a space advantage. I have ideas of going e4, getting another pawn in the centre. So one simple idea, queen e2, e4, may even start an attack later. And I just think this is slightly more pleasant for white to play. It's one of those positions I'll be happy to grind away in. You know, maybe I can go a3 and b4 and gain more space over there. And it just seems to be a very safe advantage for white, pleasant to play. But I took with the e-pawn here. And now my opponent showed his experience. I looked at one game of Kramnik's before the game, but my opponent improved on that. Now let's simple development for both sides first. Knight bd7, I castled, my opponent castled, and I'm following a Kramnik game now. Now, what you always watch out for pawn breaks. You always have to be on guard for when your opponent has a pawn break. This is a key thing, because if you can stop your opponent's pawn breaks, you snuff out a lot of your opponent's counterplay and play. And here, one pawn break my opponent, I thought, was trying to play is e5. And this is one thing I always want to watch out for. Okay, I've got a lot of pieces defending that square, but let's be super solid. And after bishop h2, my bishop was a little bit exposed there, making lovely patterns. And now if he ever plays e5, I have a tempo, because I'm not going to get hit by some tactic e5, e4. My bishop is still very good there because it has this pressure against d6, but I've just tucked it out of the way. And I've also avoided ideas of when my opponent moves a knight to one of these two squares, he gains a tempo against that bishop. So I'm just improving my pieces bit by bit. My opponent now played rook to e8, good move. This is maybe preparing e5. I played rook to e1. Again, my idea, put a rook on a half-open file. Before I'm really thinking of a main plan to do here, I'm just improving my pieces, putting my pieces on the best squares. Only then, you know, I have some ideas, but one thing I really need to improve is which I always tell people the most important thing is really you need to always, when you play an opening and you go into a position like this, need to know what plans, what you're trying to achieve. And I didn't really know that here. I mean, I know one idea is to go a4, a5 and to try to get some pressure here. But after my opponent's next move, I didn't really have an idea what I'm trying to do. Now, my opponent, you know, doesn't have many options to maneuver here. And I saw one game where black played knight to f8 and knight to g6. But this is not a very good idea from black. The knight is much better on d7. The knight's not actually doing a great deal over here. And Kramnik against this just played a4. And he followed up with some simple plan here of like knight c4 and a5 and queen b3. And he got a very nice position. And actually black's knight is needed on d7, most importantly to defend b6. So as soon as the knight moves away from d7, my opponent, what squares is he losing control of? And this is something you could always think in your own games. Well, he's losing control of this square. So when I go a5, and if I'm able to take on that square, that pawn becomes weaker. So I have a target. My opponent played a much better move here. And he just played bishop to f8, keeping things nice and solid, allowing his rook a bit of extra protection. And this is probably about an even position. And now I didn't really see the point of going a4, a5. I didn't really know what I was achieving with that at the moment. Okay, well, first of all, I went queen c2. I just connected my rooks, and I thought I may have ideas of knight g5, some bit of pressure here. My opponent played h6, stopping all that. Very experienced player, playing the right moves. And here I really struggled to find a plan. And this is one problem. You know, if you can't find a good plan in chess, then you're going to lose the game, I think. A bad plan's better than no plan. And I didn't know what to do here. I mean, I played a4, but I wasn't really sure what I'm trying to do. And okay, so what do I need to do in future? I'm not going to do that now, but this is something you should do. If you get to a normal position like this, from an opening you've researched, and then you're not sure what plan to do, how do you find the right plan? Well, if you can't work it out yourself, get some help. The computer's not going to tell you the right plan. It's going to tell you random moves. Don't use the computer to find a plan. You should look at the top games, the top players who play this kind of system. So in future, what I'm going to do before I do this again, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to search this position, and there's probably more ways of doing this. I use ChessBase, so I'm going to enter this position onto ChessBase. I'm going to press the search button. It's going to search the 15 million games or so which it has in the database, and it will come up with a list of games that have been played in the history of chess in this position. I'm then going to sort that list into ranking of white. So there's a thing there where you can rank it with the white players. And then I will look at the highest ELO rated player who has played this position as white, maybe Kramnik, someone like that, Carlson. And then I will look at the way they play it with white. And I'll be thinking, what are they trying to do as white? I don't know what plan I'm doing here. How do they move the pieces? What are they trying to do? Again, it's always the W's in chess. What are they trying to do? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? Why are you playing that? What is your opponent trying to do? This is what you need to be able to answer these questions. So that's how I would, if I got to this position again, I'm going to do my research. I need to know what my plan is in future. This is how you improve at chess. You need to, if you know what you were thinking during the game. If you weren't coming up with the right ideas, change it for the future. You know, find some games of top players, look at them, and copy them. There's nothing better. What's it? It's flattery. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and that's something, you know, when you hear copycat. Well, it's actually nice to be copied in life because it's it's flattering. People like your ideas, and this is what you should be doing. Okay, so I pushed a4 in a oh dear, what have I done there? Have I done something funny there? No. Okay, back we come. Whew. I pushed a4, but in a rather way that I didn't know what I was trying to achieve. My opponent played queen c7, and here I was thinking, well, I could keep pushing my pawn, but my opponent might even consider taking that one, and I don't know what I'm playing at here. I mean, look, the computer is now, let's just see what the computer's recommending. Just for those of you who might be doing things wrong, let's just play a couple of computer's first moves, and then we might be able to understand that it's not always good to follow the computer. Well, actually, the computer came up with a similar idea to me. It's now saying rook to e3, so let's just very quickly follow it. So rook to e3, okay, but let's say bishop, well, I don't know, rook c8 looks sensible. And now what is the computer doing? This is what, remember, what? There's another W thing. What? Let's say he goes queen b1. I mean, what is the computer doing? He's put his rook here, he's put his queen here. I don't understand. And now, let's just say black does nothing. I mean, black can go knight d5, but let's just say black plays king h8. What is the computer trying to do? I don't know. I don't understand. That's why you can't use a computer. Or maybe a5, you're probing. But I don't understand these two moves. For a human, these are hard to explain. I don't understand them. Of course, king h8 is not a very... But I'm just demonstrating a point. Okay, well, I thought my opponent's main idea, I'm trying to restrain... In chess, two things you should try and do. Restrain your opponent's ideas and push your own. Restrain his ideas, push your own. I couldn't really think what I'm doing, so I'm going to restrain my opponent's ideas. His one main idea is surely e5 at some moment, so I'm just going to go rook e2. And I'm just going to double up here so he can't push his pawns. I can't be worse then. My opponent does have any breaks, have a little bit more space. Maybe I'll think of a better idea later on. My opponent played bishop c6, and he's trying to put his queen here when he has nice control of the diagonal. I think it's a very decent plan. I played rook e1. I'm just going to continue with my plan. Maybe there was, I mean, don't get obsessed with the computer. If you have a human plan, play it. So I've done another little operation. Now, queen b7, I need to think of a new plan. And I think I came up with a good plan here. If I sit around and do nothing, then, well, you know, I could go knight e4, try to exchange lots of pieces off. But a general rule, don't make exchanges if you have more space. I have more space here because I have two pawns on the fourth rank. And if I go knight e4, my opponent, who's more cramped, can now make exchanges. And I don't want to exchange pieces because I have more space. It's against the rules. And my opponent can just whip off pieces here. And at some point, he can put his knight here. And you can see all the pieces getting exchanged. He can even go d5. And without my light square bishop here, I'm never going to be able to checkmate him. I need this bishop in order to attack his king. And this is nothing. This is no advantage. And against an experienced player like Rozentalis, this is not the right way to play. So b4 is a good move. Now, it's double-edged because whenever you make a pawn move, you weaken squares. And here I weaken c3, and that is on a half-open file, so it's double-edged, but also in order to win games of chess, you need to take risks. On the other hand, my plan is I'm trying to take advantage of my opponent's queen b7 move. I'm trying to play b5 at the right moment and make him exchange his good bishop for my knight. That bishop is his most active piece. I want to get rid of it. So my opponent now played rook c8. Okay, his rook is lined up against my queen. I'm just going to move my queen off that file. Queen d3, got to be a good move. My queen is slightly better here. Potential against e6 later on. a5. And now, well, I think this is a positionally quite well-founded move from my opponent. I don't need to think too much here. Taking on a5 would be a horrible error because I've swapped my b pawn for his b pawn. My b pawn was much more useful than his b pawn. His b pawn is a backwards pawn. I can't get rid of his bishop now. And has swapping pawns help? Does swapping queens help? No, it doesn't. It helps him. If I swap queens, we can see how my c pawn is now weak. Always, when you have an opportunity to swap pieces or pawns, think, is your pawn better than his pawn? Is your piece better than his piece? My pawn is better than his pawn, so I go b5. Look, it's much better. It cramps him, it attacks. My opponent now had to get rid of his bishop, and around here I think I've managed to gain some advantage. But my opponent plays now a good move, knight d5. And the idea of this is he's trying to gain a square on b4. So if I play c4 ever, which is a natural move, he gets this very nice square for his knight. And how am I going to remove that lovely knight of his? I don't know. And, you know, I can play around that knight, but why give away squares when you don't need to? So my move, rook c1, is a much better move. I can play c4 at any moment, and I don't want to play it now because I don't want to give away squares until I have to. My opponent played his other knight to f6, but here I'm sure I should be better because I kept my bishop, and this is a very nice piece. And I was feeling quite confident. Maybe I started to go wrong here, but bishop to b1 seems so sensible. Two reasons. When I go c4, he goes knight b4. He's not attacking my bishop, so I can keep my bishop. Another reason, maybe I have ideas of putting my queen on this diagonal at the right moment later on. It improves my position, so I play the move. There's no rush here, so I play the move. Now my opponent played a very good plan. He played queen c7, and he's literally trying to force me to move my pawn. He's saying, come on, move your pawn. I need this square for my knight. So I move my pawn, and now he played a very good move because, remember, if he moves his knight straight away, what is a good move for me here? It's c5. And look how powerful this little hidden dagger is on h2. I told you that was a good piece. And then I get this tremendous c pawn. That pawn is going to c6, protected pass pawn on the 6th rank. I'm positionally winning here. I'm just winning. That pawn is going to win the game. If we go back one move, here, the pawn is not very good. It's actually a target. I don't have any pawns that can defend it. But if that pawn moves 2 squares forwards, it becomes a real trump. So my opponent's very crafty idea is after c4, he just moves his queen back. And even though he's lost 2 tempo, it doesn't matter because he's gained the b4 square for his knight. Okay, so now, I don't know. I messed around here and I lost my advantage. I think I should just play around this knight. Something like knight d2. Securing the square, and after knight here I maybe play around this knight and move my queen over to the center, and I just say, well, okay, you've got your knight to this lovely square. Now why is queen e3 a good move? Because again, in this position I'm thinking about what is my opponent trying to do. Remember what I said earlier? Look at his pawn breaks. I'm not worried about e5 anymore, but I am worried about d5, because my opponent would maybe like to swap off his d pawn for my c pawn. Just imagine those 2 pawns being removed from the board. Why would that help my opponent? Because then my opponent has total domination of this central d5 square. So if he can go d5 and exchange on c4, then he has domination of this highlighted square in the center of the board. I mean, that must be better for him. So I'm trying to, with queen e3, act against that, because if he goes d5 now, what is my idea? I want to play c5 again because my queen is controlling the c5 square. So this is the way you should be thinking in your games. Of course, restrain and improve. Restrain and improve. But I played knight to e1. And I thought this is quite logical because knight b4, I played knight d3. And I'm trying to exchange off knights. But this is the wrong plan because my opponent now plays d5. And this is exactly the move I wanted to try and stop. I thought I could go c5 here, but I forgot. He just takes my knight and he wins the pawn on c5. And you know, let's just show that positional transformation that I could have stopped. Let's say I play a nothing move. Let's say I go king h1, for example. Now my opponent takes on c4, and look at this square. He can now play knight to d5, and he has lovely, lovely knights. I can't move these knights. These knights dominate my bishops. And against an experienced player like Rozentalis, I really struggle here. So this is what I must avoid. You must, again, think of pawn exchanges, transformations. Why are they good? Why are they bad? If they're bad, avoid them. So here, I thought I had to get rid of one knight. My opponent played bishop takes b4. And now, again, I think I'm okay, but I played queen here because I'm trying to stop him at all costs from taking on c4. My opponent moved out of the pin, queen e7, and now I played a horrendous move. I played my next move very quickly. I thought I was still doing okay. And I thought, well, if I just go rook c2, then I can maybe even take on d5 at the right moment, as long as I get control of the c-file. My bishop is very nice here, and b6 is weak later on. This is okay, but I shouldn't play my next move. I should go bishop a2 with a roughly equal game. I played rook c2, and now I totally missed. My opponent can just go bishop to a3, and I was like, oh no, what have you done, Simon? And I have to lose a pawn now. So I mean, my rook is attacked. I have to move it, and my opponent now simply goes pawn takes pawn. And this is where you have to change your way of thinking. I've dropped a pawn. Though this happens to all of us. You had an okay position. Your position maybe is better. Maybe it's equal. You drop a pawn. What should you do? Should you panic? How should you approach it? Should you lose all hope? I mean, look at the computer's assessment. We'll use it now. I'm over a pawn down. What should you do? Well, what my way of thinking is, if I play normally now, I'm going to lose. If I just play normal moves, I'm going to lose the game. So when the position starts to go wrong, it's time to roll the dice. You need to take more risks. You're going to lose anyway, so you need to take more risks. If the risks don't pay off, you'll lose quicker. So what? You get to the bar quicker. It's better that way. So when things start to go wrong for you, the way I cope with this is to play with more risk. I take more chances. I go for a gung-ho attack in this game. I try to complicate things. Because if I don't complicate things, he's just going to win. He's a pawn up. I need to make it messy. So, okay, queen to e2. I want him to move a c-pawn because now at least I have this battering ram against h7. If I can get rid of the knight, maybe my queen can come in. So I'm complicating. He goes bishop to b4. He's got this horrendously strong pass c-pawn. If I don't do anything, he's just going to win because that's c-pawn. So I play bishop to e5. I want to get rid of my opponent's knight and try to come in with my queen. So I'm attacking. I'm just putting all my pieces on aggressive squares. I'm hoping something will turn up. g6, closing down my queen. So now rook e2. My bishop opens up. My rook is slightly better placed. Knight d5. My opponent controlling good squares. And again, I'm constantly thinking, what is my opponent trying to do? Even though I'm attacking here, what is he trying to do? Well, now I think he's going to try to exchange off the bishop with bishop d6. When you're pawn up, when you're material up, you want to exchange pieces. And then if he gets rid of my bishop, he gets rid of one attacking piece. I don't want to allow that. Queen g3. And this stops bishop d6, so I restrain. But I also now have bishop takes g6. I create a threat at least. So my opponent goes here. I thought he could try queen g5, but then I was just going to go queen h2. I can't exchange queens. If I exchange queens, I'm walking into his game. Of course, I'm still in a lot of trouble here, but with queen h2, I can at least still play. I can play h4. I can play h5. I can try to open his king up. I've got to keep the queens on anyway. My position's bad. I don't matter if I lose. At least here, I'm trying to do something. So, this is why, even if you're not playing computer best moves, if you're worse, maybe losing anyway, it doesn't matter if your evaluation on the computer drops, you've got to complicate. So, king h7, my opponent played. He played a more solid move. Now, how can I keep attacking? I've got a target here. Harry. h4, of course. I want to play h5 and I want to try to open his king up. I'm going for a desperate attack. My opponent stops at h5 himself, meaning I can't attack. Now, in a lot of positions, my opponent has c2. So I play bishop c2 first, just stopping that move. My opponent plays rook d8. And why did he do that? Because he wants to go bishop d6 now. He's covering this square. He wants to exchange pieces. And then he wants to go knight b4, exchange pieces, when his c-pawn will win. Things are getting desperate. Queen f3. I create a threat of queen takes h5 check. My opponent only has one good way to stop that, f5. And this is where I really think I played quite well in a diabolical situation. And this is where I'm going to disagree with the computer. Whatever the computer says, I think my idea was better. I mean, the computer says I play something like g3, rook c1, I sit here and I wait. I wait for the inevitable. I wait. I have to sit here and wait. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that. If I sit here and wait, my opponent is going to win in the long run. He swaps off. Eventually, he'll get through. And I have to do something drastic. So what did I do? I went g4 and just wait. Look at the computer's assessment here. But I think it's a great move. Another thing is here, my opponent's getting a bit shorter time. He's only got under a minute left. So I need to go crazy. And with this move, look how it unsettles him. Rather than going, if I played anything else except for this move, I'd either lose, maybe draw. I'd have no winning chances. By playing this move, I create a position later on where I get winning chances. So I give myself another result just by going crazy. Why did I play this move? Because I thought I need to have the possibility of going h5. After queen g3, I give myself h5. I'm desperately trying to open up his position. Bishop d6 and the point h5. And I'm just trying to open up as many lines as I can towards his king. Now my opponent here played one mistake just on the move. Well, this is his first mistake for time control. I think it's a bit of bluff. I think my opponent can take on h5 when it looks a bit risky because he's opened up his king, and maybe I can try to get a rook to h1. And he should be winning if he does this. I mean, I don't really see what I'm doing here. I mean, my bluff has gone against me. But my opponent did not play this. He took on e5, allowing me to take on g6 check. And now he went king g7, rook takes e5. And here, things have got a little bit more tricky for him. Because, you know, his king is a little bit weaker now. I think I was losing anyway. Again, the computer doesn't like my idea, but I like it. It's a very human way of playing. Again, it shows you when you can, you know, have difference in opinions to computers. I'm overcomplicating. Of course, my opponent's still winning, but I'm giving myself some chances. You know, there's a bishop takes f5 idea. There's a rook e1 idea. I have some easy moves to play, and my opponent now gets a bit uncomfortable. He had everything under control, but now he starts playing some dubious moves. Queen f6. Okay, well, let's create a threat. Rook here, creating a threat of taking that one. And now if he goes rook e8, maybe I can play bishop takes f5. He has to suddenly calculate these tactical ideas. And this is actually, as we can see, according to the computer, good for me. Unbelievably. Well, maybe not good for me as it's changing, but it's okay. It's not so bad. So my opponent plays knight c7, and this now forced him a little bit passive. And the idea is if I go queen takes c3, he goes knight takes b5, he takes on d4, and he comes in here. I can't do that. But what can I play? I've got to go. Remember what was I trying to do from stage 1? I'm a pawn down. I try to complicate. That's what I'm trying to do here. If I don't play a complicated move here, again, I lose. I've got to complicate. Bishop takes f5. Got to try to smash on through. And whatever the whatever the computer says, I'm making it messy. And after pawn takes, rook e7 check. This all looks pretty forced. King takes, rook takes c7. Well, now anything's possible because his king is weak, and the position is certainly not clear. Now, of course, you know, a lot of positions black can be a pawn up. I mean, the computer line here takes. Rook takes d4. Black is a very strong pawn up, but his king is also a little bit weak here. So there are numerous tricks in this position and numerous things that, you know, will make his life difficult, whatever the computer says. I mean, something like, you know, a human move here, rook e8. What about that? I don't know if that loses. That's the first move I consider, because now, again, I have rook g8 check. And, well, I mean, the computer here is giving f4, but how many humans would be happy putting their king on f5 or something? I mean, this looks really unclear, and you can see actually the assessment that's going down here. I have a lot of checks. You know, I'd be very scared if I was black here. So again, this is all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to play practical chess, and this is what you need to do in order to become a much better chess player. It's not about playing perfect moves; it's about playing practical moves. And my opponent played c2, and I played my next move at a tempo d5 because I saw this in advance. I now have ideas of rook e6, rook c6 in some lines. And I was feeling a lot more comfortable here. And look how my opponent doesn't handle the pressure well. He really doesn't. He takes on c7, and now he takes on d5. But after queen takes c2, this is really not clear to my eyes. Yes, he is one pawn up, but his king is very weak, as we've explained. My rook might be able to get around. And I may even have ideas of going queen c6, going for an ending, which is a draw in some positions. And this is not so bad at all. My opponent had not been able to handle the change of pace. And now he played the awful move g3. And I thought, well, you know, if you can't see a reason not to take a pawn, take a pawn. So I simply took the pawn. And now it's equal material. Queen d6. But after my next move, I think my opponent thought, oh, he's either going to win here or come in with a rook. But after my next move, queen b3, I actually now starting to prefer white. And my opponent, again, is getting short of time. I know he's made the time trial, but he's back in time trial. But here, well, I mean, this is really not clear. I thought if he moved his rook, my queen comes in. But he does move his rook, rook b3. And now I thought, hang on a minute. Okay, but I'll tell you what the problem was in a second. Okay, now I can go rook e6, but I thought the endings were always okay for him. I thought if I go queen g8 check, this gives me winning chances. King 8 here. And now I can already force a draw with queen h8 check. But I thought, well, hang on a minute. You know, my opponent is letting this slip. He must be mentally not in the right here. He must have mentally gone a little bit funny. Why? I don't need to take a draw here yet. I was also thinking, well, hang on a minute. I'll be happy with a draw. But I'll tell you what happened. I thought, well, the only way I can play for a win is king h2. Otherwise, he's going to have perpetual, you know, he's going to have perpetual, or I have to take a perpetual. And in this position, if I get a chance to play rook e8, I may well get a mating net against him. My king can always come to this square. For example, rook d2 check, king h3. All I need is one more move, and I'm in. I'm in the position. My opponent now, this is where I really made a major mistake, but I've got to this by practical chess, creating my own chances. And this is what you need to do in life, isn't it? You create your own luck often. Now, rook h2 check. My opponent got so scared, he decided to go into an ending with queen d2 check and queen takes e1. And now what happened here? I mean, I can't explain this. I offered a draw. I think I was so relieved, I offered a draw immediately in this position because I basically saw he has queen h1 checkmate, and I thought, well, you know, I have a perpetual now, I can check him about, but I didn't. I offered a draw without thinking. I was so relieved to have survived a clearly worse position where I blundered a pawn. I was very relieved to have a draw. What I should have done, I should have gone for a walk. Got a cup of coffee, reassessed the situation, taken my time, and just calm down. Every time something in a game of chess changes, you need to reassess. And if I had reassessed here, my opponent obviously took the draw very quickly. I would have seen that I had queen d8 check, and I would have seen that I'm winning one of these two pawns with check, and I would have seen I had great winning chances in the ending. Very annoyed by this, you know, I was very annoyed afterwards. That, okay, I mean, maybe it's an alright result at some point, and I think it's a fair result, but I could have won this game. What a turnaround could that have been? For example, king f7, and now I can't take here because of checkmate, but I can play sort of queen somewhere check. Let's say queen, I don't know, queen here check. And my point is, I want to take here with check, and if he goes, I don't know, let's say king to g8, looks like quite a human move. I still can't take that pawn, but now I can go check. Let's say king g7. Again, I can't take this pawn with check, but I can just take the pawn now. And the point is, I've got the g4 square for my king. I'm a pawn up in an ending. I'm not going to lose this. I've only got winning chances, very good winning chances, because his B pawn's very weak. And I'll play this on until the cows come home. My opponent's short of time for the rest of the game. Maybe I'll win this game. So I think really quite a lot of lessons to be learnt there. Number one, maybe not the right opening choice against the opponent. Number two, I was so obsessed with getting rid of his knight on b4. I forgot about this transformation that he had with d5. I should have been more obsessed about stopping his pawn break, refraining. I then blundered. After that, I think I fought back well, but mentally, never rush into making a draw offer. Always have a think, and you've got to change yourself mentally. If you think you're losing, you're suddenly winning. You've got to man up in certain respects. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be taken there. But again, quite an interesting, more positional game there at times. And that, well, I'm going to call that my round 2 game from Dundee. Hopefully some of that helped you, and hopefully you learned something that you can take away to improve your own game from that video. Thanks for watching, and more videos to come.